My name is Mike O'Brien. I'm the CEO of iMentor. I've been with iMentor about 5 years now. But before I joined the organization, I was teaching high school for 3 years in East New York. And one of the things that brought me to iMentor is that I had just moved to New York and I was a young guy. And my first graduating class that got out, there were sort of 5 kids that got into college out of the SUNY and CUNY system, and 0 of those 5 kids made it through their first year. And I started to think a lot about why that was, and at the same time I was going home to my part of New York City every night, and none of my friends, my girlfriends, knew anything about East New York and what was going on out there. And I think even more damning is that when I was in the classroom every day, the vast majority of my students didn't know anything about many other parts of New York City or the kind of labs that were going on there. And so I, of course, felt like I was being enriched by knowing both parts of the city, and I started to look for organizations that bridge that divide. And I was lucky enough to find iMentor. I think I came in maybe close to 4 years after iMentor was founded. And iMentor was founded sort of on this belief that mentoring had been around for 100 years, and it's a very effective youth development strategy. But the needle hadn't moved on how many adults were volunteering as mentors for a long, long time. So there are studies that say there's almost 18 million kids out there who are high need for mentors, and only 2.5 mentors are volunteering nationwide. And that number is not moving a lot. And so iMentor set out with the challenge of, can we create a new kind of mentoring model? Also, email and other technologies were becoming more common at that time. In '99 when we were founded. Could we use email to create a more flexible mentoring model? So when we looked at why more people weren't mentoring, you look at the traditional mentoring commitment where you as a mentor have to go to where the student lives every Tuesday at 4. It rules out thousands of potential volunteers who have the time to give but don't have the flexibility in their schedule to give. So we developed a model that includes weekly email communication, that conversations built around our curriculum, monthly in-person meetings with our pairs, and then individualized support for all pairs. And the idea was, could we create a model that, 1, engaged a whole new class of mentor, 2, could work in the communities that traditional mentoring programs couldn't reach. So oftentimes the most isolated or underserved communities are also the most geographically isolated. They're the exact same places that mentors are least willing or able to travel to. And then 3rd, and this was really the big question mark when iMentor was launched, I think, could we make, in this new model, mentoring relationships that were as effective, if not more effective, than relationships in the traditional model? We really spent our first 4 years working on that, getting all of the pieces in place. We kept most of the best practices of traditional mentoring programs, but building up the curriculum and all the support and how we're going to measure it and that kind of stuff. And we have grown the program now to a point where we're doing 1,000 one-to-one mentor-mentee pairs this year in New York City. 70% of those pairs are in multi-year relationships, so it's a mentor who's getting matched with a student in freshman, sophomore, junior year of high school, staying with them through high school graduation. And we're seeing all of the same impact that traditional mentoring programs are seeing, and we're also seeing added impact around academic and career issues, which is where a lot of our curriculum is focused. We're really now starting to do better evaluation than we've done in the past, and to get controls and that kind of stuff. But we're in 15 schools in 4 boroughs, and we're seeing really encouraging numbers. Like the last 2 years, our high school graduation rate was over 90% both years, and our college entrance rate was above 75% both years. Not that we're the only thing that's causing that, but we think that we're certainly playing an important role. And so really the first 5 or 6 years was dedicated to that, of iMentor's evolution. But then when we started to get these results back, we also started to think about and talk about what can our contribution be to the national mentoring field. And the first thing that we considered was a franchise model where, iMentor in 50 cities. And one of the things that we didn't like about that model was we would go and we would compete for funding, and we would compete for volunteers, and we would even compete for youth who are already enrolled in programs. And at the same time, what was happening is that we would get 2 to 3 calls a month from organizations all over the world that would say, either when's iMentor coming to Chicago, or how can we add an e-mentoring component to what we do? And so the light bulb moment for us was, and we're also at a point in New York where we're about to jump from 300-400 matches a year to try to get to 800, 1,000, 1,500 matches a year. What if we could rebuild all of our technology infrastructure, all the front-end tools that our pairs use to build a relationship, but all the back-end tools that we use to manage it also? What if we could roll in everything we've learned over the first 6 years? And what if we can, the web world went a long way from 99 to 2005. What if we could also roll in all of the best new online innovations? And what if we could do it in a way that would give any nonprofit out there all the tools and resources they needed to run a quality mentoring component? And they would have a safe and secure network just for their participants and staff. And so that was the idea. And one of the things, I guess this is maybe a little more related to the class, one of the things we like about the idea is that it is a direct match for our mission of expanding mentoring. But it's also, we were able to take what we believe is a core competency and develop it in New York, and then use it to get it out to organizations all over the world, but also use it to make us more stable and to fuel our growth. And so it's a revenue generating model for us. And so that was around 2005. We spent a couple of years raising money for it, building it, testing it for an entire year in New York City, but it launched a little over a year ago. And we're working with nonprofits all over the country now. We're existing mentoring programs that are able to enhance themselves with these tools, but a big part of it is youth development programs and school systems that have been trying to implement mentoring programs for years but haven't been able to do it successfully. So bringing mentoring to them for the first time, every organization shouldn't have to figure out all of these sort of frustrating and hard things that we figured out over our first 6 years. And organizations are also using it to engage their alumni and to bring their alumni back as mentors. And so we're working with sort of charter schools all over the country and youth development programs all over the country, and it even goes as broadly as we're working with Goldman Sachs and their 10,000 Women Initiative. So the idea is, what if 10,000 Goldman entrepreneurs mentored 10,000 women entrepreneurs in developing countries? And so I think that's a testament to why we feel the platform is so strong. Goldman obviously had all the money in the world, maybe until recently. They put $100 million behind the project. They had the great people, they had the great vision, and they knew that they wanted mentoring to be a sort of cornerstone of this, but they didn't have the tools or the expertise themselves, and that's the value we think that we can add. And so we've rolled that out. That is starting to become a revenue generator for us, but we're also in the middle of a growth capital campaign where we're trying to raise $10 million, and we're sort of right in the middle of that right now. And what that will allow us to do, we think, is our strategy to grow to scale, or our strategy to grow over the next 5 years, is to both increase to 10,000 matches here in New York City and increase to 3,000 pairs a year by year 5, but also to bring mentoring to over 200 organizations through our Mentor Interactive. We think if we can do that successfully, both the growth in New York allows us to stay in a state of continual innovation. It allows us to roll all those best practices, continue to roll them up into iMentor Interactive, the national platform. And then the national platform becomes the distribution for all of those best practices and resources. And we think if we do it right, we can reduce our reliance on philanthropy from 96% last year to less than 20% by year 5. And so what remains to be seen, but what we're very hopeful of, is that if we can execute this plan correctly, we can grow over the next 5 years and then not need to raise growth capital again to continue to grow on that sort of pace after the growth period.